Welcome. You are listening to Haunted Histories on Paranormal UK Radio. And hello, everybody, and welcome to this issue of Haunted Histories exclusively on Paranormal UK Radio. Now, by the time this show goes out on the 9th of November, you will still have 4 days to get your votes in for the Higgy Pop Awards. And drumroll, Haunted Histories has actually been nominated for Best Podcast, which I'm absolutely blown away by. And not just that, my book, A Haunted Experiment, has been nominated for Best Book as well. So if you enjoy what you hear, or you enjoy what you read, or you're just in a very kind of benevolent mood, it would be lovely for you to vote for me. Thank you very much. Anyway, those of us in the UK, we're on another lockdown for November, although so far the schools are still open for the children, which, whatever you feel about that, it makes my life and a lot of other parents' lives a lot easier. But I'm still putting out podcasts for you. I am still putting out blogs for you. I've still got 2 books that you can read if you're bored. So, get on it. And don't forget, Haunted Magazine. All right, for that too. God, how do I fit this all in? I'm really not quite sure. But another thing, I've got to find the energy to cope with my 2 guests tonight, because one of them on their own is bad enough. But I've got 2. I've got the paranormal BFFs themselves, from Ghostfinder Paranormal Society, Phil, Measey, and BarriGhai. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Now, I say being BFFs, they are best mates.
Yes.
We are.
Yeah. And I've had to deal with the 2 of them together on an investigation before, and I'm not saying that they're not professional. They are. They're uber professional. But when you get them away from the public, it's like 2 naughty schoolboys. Are you 2 going to behave tonight?
Oh, we'll try, Penny. We'll try.
Yeah. I can't promise anything, Penny, but we'll just see how it goes, shall we? What do you reckon, Bad?
Yeah, we'll be fine. We'll be good.
Yeah, we'll be good. Seeing you've asked so nicely, Penny, we'll try our best tonight.
Oh, thank you. Now, I must admit, when I thought about booking the 2 of you on for a show, I suddenly thought, oh my good God, what have I let myself in for? But if nothing else, it will be fun. It will be fun, I reckon. Because last time I saw Phil, that was at Ettington Park, wasn't it?
That was correct, yeah.
And then you and I basically we ended up sitting opposite each other, blindfold with headphones on, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah. Yeah, knees touching. I must admit, the husband saw the photo of that and he went, what the hell is going on? Unfortunately, because he's reasonably savvy to sort of paranormal stuff, I was able to explain it to him. But a less understanding husband might have been a bit some kind of kinky 50 Shades of Grey shit going on or something. I don't know. It was a fun evening, quite an illuminating one at that.
It certainly was.
Yeah. So I know you're both busy, even with lockdown, and if anyone can hear banging and stuff going on in the background, there's not, I'm not in a war zone. It's actually November the 5th when we're recording this, and the fireworks are going off behind my house like there is no tomorrow. And even though I've got all the windows and doors shut, they're very loud. So I do apologise for any of that background noise if people hear it. But what I thought I would talk about with the guys tonight is a place that is pretty much 15 minutes, 20 minutes up the road from me, which always makes for a nice ghost hunt when you can actually come home almost on the same day that you left. But it's one that these 2 have been to quite a lot. And it is a very well-known one. But I've not really done a show on this one for nearly 4 years. So my first show on this was when I was a baby podcaster. And I wanted to re-examine it because I've subsequently written about it when I wrote my haunted history, and I've been back to it a few more times since. And I wanted to talk to some people who've done it a lot, and that's Kelvedon Hatch, not so secret nuclear bunker. Now, Barry,
Yeah.
how many times would you say you've visited the bunker?
At least half a dozen times. I think over the last 15 years, I think I've probably been there 6, 7, maybe even more than that. I've lost count.
And Phil?
Yeah, about the same, really. I mean, me and Baz pretty much do everything
Together.
in regard to the paranormal together. So wherever sort of Baz goes, I tend to sort of like tag along, sort of thing, you know. So
You know that's called stalking, don't you?
yeah, it's all right. It's allowed. We're best mates. So it's Barry actually stalks me, to be honest. But,
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Sorry for my misunderstanding there. Phil, can you remember what you thought of the place the first time you went there?
I was quite in awe, actually, of the place, because you get this impression of this place that just goes down and down deep into the ground. But ironically, I didn't feel like it was a creepy place to begin with. You know, and when you first go in there, because it's all the lights are all on, and you know, there's plenty of the other team members are about and stuff like that. But as the night progressed, you sort of get this feeling that I know it sounds a little bit cliche, that you're not alone, even though you know you're with your teammates and stuff like that. It's definitely got an atmosphere. 100%. It gives you that false impression that everything's okay. What do you reckon, Baz? Would that be
I agree with you, mate. I think it's a place that keeps on giving. You know, you never know what you're going to get as such when you're there, because you uncover something new, or there's some new evidence that you might bring to the table following an investigation there. But every time I've been there, I have experienced something different, something that I've taken away and scratched my head and thought, that's interesting, and I wonder why. So it's a place that, you know, keeps you coming back. It's attractive.
Well, I remember the first time I ever went there was actually on a day trip. And I think it was my birthday about 15 years ago. And my birthday's in July, and the whole plan was to have a lovely picnic and everything else. Of course, that day it was chucking down with rain and about 15 degrees outside. So the picnic was out. But we decided, my now husband and I decided to go round it. And the first thing I really thought of was, how the hell is there a bunker beneath this tiny little cottage? Because for those people who haven't been there, originally it was actually built, and here's a bit of the history. Originally it was actually built as something called a rotor SOC, and rotor was actually to do with the new radar system that the British had brought in post World War II. Originally they'd been used, it's all to do with the chain home system, which is what they had used, but they had to make it better because aircraft were faster. By the end of World War II, they developed jets. They were starting to worry about Russia or the USSR because the Soviet Union had discovered nuclear weapons in, I think it was 1949. So, and a lot of these main rotor things were built with these sort of largish cottage, sort of 1950s style brick cottage. And I must admit, you walk in there thinking, how on earth can there be this much room underneath? And you see that corridor, that first corridor, the tunnel, the 91 foot tunnel that you have to, or is it 91 meters? No, 91 meters. The 91 meter tunnel that you have to walk down towards the bomb blast doors. And you don't realise that once you've finished walking down that, you're now 125 feet underground. Do you? You just don't. It's very sort of, it throws you a bit. And I found it fascinating. I didn't feel uncomfortable in there at all. But the weirdest thing we found was we were in, I think it was where all the air conditioning equipment is, and there's like a gangway that walks across them. And my husband and I both smelled this burning smell, like rubber burning, like something was overheating. And we both smelled it. And we sort of went rushing around to see if something was on fire or if someone had been smoking who shouldn't have been. And there was nothing there. And when we went back, the smell had gone completely. And that was my first sort of experience of it back in, what would it have been, about 2009, 2010. No, actually, no, before then, because it was before I had the kids. So 2006, 2007. And that was my first experience of the place, going, where on earth did this smell come from? That we both smelled. And then talking to other people who've been there a lot, they've had exactly the same smell, but in different parts of that area, which kind of got me intrigued from then. And that was before I started doing proper investigating. But my first, I say, I've probably investigated there 3 or 4 times now. And as you say, every time you go, something slightly different happens. So the place was built in 1952, 53 sort of time, originally as it was a military. Then it went over to the RAF for, I think it was about 8 years. And then it started being used for civilian use as it was a sub-region of the region, what they called the regional seats of government, which is what would control the country in the event of nuclear war. A lot of people ask, I know we were talking about this off air, guys, but a lot of people, members of the public who aren't what I would call sort of seasoned investigators, first thing they'll ask is, who has died here? How many people have died here? And I will come up with, well, none that can be proved, none that can be documented. And the next question is, well, why would it be haunted then?
Barry, that all the time. Well, it's one of those questions, isn't it? You know, members of the public, guests, they're always going to ask that question because it's apparent that there's no real evidence to suggest that somebody has died in that building. And one of the legends, we talked about this before, but one legend is that during construction of the site, concrete was being poured, you know, day and night because it's 10 feet thick walls, etc. But one morning, the foreman's hard hat was apparently found floating on the wet concrete, but he was nowhere to be found. So the assumption being that he had accidentally drowned or been buried alive within the very walls of that building. Now, there is no supporting evidence anywhere, is there, of some guy dying, a member of a construction team? No. So that in itself is, I think it's just one of those Chinese whispers, you know. It's perhaps a medium, a psychic, picked up on this and said this once, and then after that it just got copied and picked up, and lots of people then use that in terms of, oh, well, this place is haunted because. Yeah. And the other things being that, oh, there's no alleged deaths there, so how can it be haunted? Well, it's not just the building and the deaths there. You've got to think about the land. You've got to think about the very fact that it was apparently, according to some people, built on part of a burial ground. It could be pagan burial ground. And you know, you're digging 100 and whatever it is, 50 feet below ground. You're going to get to some level of historic existence, aren't you? You know. You're digging into that patch. My biggest thing is, I think that the building is haunted because it is subterranean for a start. It is dark, it is damp, and there was never any human energy there or life. It was, you know, it's meant to house 600 people or so. And it was never used. It was never an actively operating facility.
You say that. But there were times when the doors were shut and the equipment powered up.
Correct. But there were people there testing and making sure it was working before it was decommissioned, wasn't it?
Yeah. And you've also got, whereas I agree there was no one ever there, and obviously we've never had a nuclear war, thank God. But I found out from a client of mine that she found out on her dad's deathbed he'd worked there in the 60s as an engineer. And when she put 2 and 2 together after he died, now bear in mind in 1962 you had what's called the Forlex project, which was sort of September time, when the government powered up every single nuclear, like civil nuclear bunker they had to see if they could cope with a nuclear war, and they spent a lot of money on it. And there was over 4,000 staff were called in to work them, and it became public where a lot of these bunkers were, and it's all in the Hansard reports. You can read all about it, and that they were very concerned that there's no point having them now if everyone knew where they were. But then a month after that, in 1962, what happened? Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes.
So you had two events in 1962 which would have caused the bunker to be on red alert, which would have meant all staff had to be there. Now, she remembers there was about 2 or 3 weeks, I think it was, in the 60s when her dad did not come home from work. He used to come home every day. He didn't come home, and her mum said, "Oh, he's on a business trip." She put together when he was dying because he had dementia. So some of it was correct what he was saying, but he was gabbling. He wasn't. His whole sort of secrecy act thing, inhibition. He'd lost his inhibition to not tell secrets, and she worked out that he would have been there around that time. I wonder if some of the spirits that go back are just ones that had it hammered home to them how important their job was, and that they had to put it in front of everything else, including family, friends, their life, because they knew that if they were called in, they couldn't worry about their family on the outside. They knew that their family would be dead 3 months later.
Very true, but then you'd think that'd be more of a residual emotional energy as opposed to an intelligent haunting.
Possibly.
You know, a classic haunting would be where, you know, somebody has died in a traumatic circumstance and they still have that affinity and attachment to the object or place. But in this particular building, you've got a lot of objects that have been brought in there, added to over the many years, as well as the equipment that might well have powered on and been used or turned on, but not used for in an emotional crisis, like a nuclear war, for example. So it does ask that question all the time. Well, why is it haunted? My personal theory on this is that these are spirits that are not all, majority of them are not all human entities. They are energies, earth energies, elemental spirits. A lot of things that have been conjured, and a lot of things that have been brought in as baggage by other people.
Hitchhikers.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
Just getting back to what Barry was saying about, I think a lot of people also get confused about hauntings as well. I mean, Barry said in like a traumatic instance, but it doesn't have to be a traumatic instance why a possible spirit, a ghost, or whatever you want to call it, haunts a location. It could be because they loved the place. You know, they had a connection with it in a fondness for the location as well. So I think a lot of people think, something terrible must have happened to that person. That's why they haunt it. Well, actually, no, it's not always the case.
Well, that's what I wonder about some of if they are former members of staff who are there. If the reason they're there is because of the fact they did have to sacrifice everything, if that was their job, they had to know, and that must give. It's almost like a Pavlov's dog thing. You know, they knew if they heard the phone went, for example, and they were being called into work, they couldn't tell their family why. They just had to say, "I'm going to work." They couldn't say the bomb's launched. You know, they weren't allowed to tell them anything, and. Is that kind of, it's almost like sort of muscle memory that you keep pinging back to it, because a lot of those people have never talked about what they did there. And like she said, she never knew from her father until he was on his deathbed and he wasn't thinking straight. He admitted, he started talking about his job sort of, because so many people with dementia go back sort of to a certain time period. That's what they can remember and they start talking about. And he started talking about his role at the bunker, and her mum actually then verified it afterwards that yes, we know I knew where he worked, I just didn't know what he did. So it's fascinating to think about all the potentials, but I mean, if anyone does know that proof of any deaths that have taken place, so like this foreman, like the construction worker is another one who's supposed to have taken his life on one of the stairs. I would love to see the evidence and be proved wrong, because I can't find any.
I'd have to agree with you there, Penny. I'd like to see something because there is, like, I've got to agree with Barry. There's definitely something about that location that suggests that there's something going on there.
Yeah, definitely.
Not necessarily in a bad way, but there's a lot that there is. I agree with Barry. Like, there's a lot of energy there.
Yeah,
a lot of unusual things happened to us in the last investigation. When did we do that, Barry? About a month ago.
Last month ago. Yeah, about a month ago.
Yeah.
So, what was this unusual stuff, boys?
I caught several EVPs in a long tunnel with the whole group, public group, and I you know how I do mine, as you've seen on TV. I'll do the recording nice and short and play it back in real time, so you get to hear the responses and then follow up with those questions. And we were getting responses that seemed to be male and female, human responses, and they were. Well, the male energy was very grumpy. I mean, it was just no's. You know, he was answering the questions. It was an intelligent response, but there were no's. It was no, grumpy. You know, that kind of thing. And the female energy was heard on the other end of the tunnel towards the blast doors. So Phil and several members of the team and group, they all heard a female from down there. Phil, do you want to explain what you heard?
Yeah, definitely heard a woman talking towards the blast doors. So I eventually went down there on my own, didn't I, Barry, and stood down there to see if I could capture her. As of yet, I haven't had actually time to listen to my EVPs from Kelvedon because I've been so busy with work. But if I do get a chance before this goes out, I will send you anything that I've got. So you can add it to the podcast if you wanted to.
Thank you.
But I can't go. I'll try and do it at the weekend. But Baz, there was definitely a woman's voice, and we heard it more than once as well. And I had the same experience when I was with my group just past the blast doors into the map room at the bottom. I don't know if you know where that is. You go down them steps, don't you? And there's got several rooms that branch off, and then there's the map room that when you go up to the stairs. Well, I was with my group in that area, and all of us together, I think there was about 9 of us in the group, including me. We all heard a woman talking as if she was stood in the doorway of the map room, as clear as day. Now, sadly didn't have the voice recorder running because we were changing rooms at the time, so I switched the voice recorder off. But I heard her twice. We all heard her twice talking, as if she was in there talking to someone or at us, and that was really weird. That room is I think a lot more active than people always look at the corridor because it's spooky, you know, that big long corridor. And when I tell them the story of why there's no little alcoves or anywhere people can hide on it freaks them out. Do you know the reason why it's one long straight corridor? Either of you? Isn't that
protection of some kind?
Pardon?
No idea, no.
It's partly to do with the way that the bomb doors, they go round in a corner to dissipate any blast, but it's also that if the sirens went off, people couldn't push their way in because there's no way for them to hide in that corridor, so they could be shot, basically, trying to push their way in. That's why it is also to do with blast, they say blast dissemination and everything else. But yeah, one of the reasons is they would have armed guards so that if members of the public who weren't supposed to be down there, shall we say, started trying to push their way in, that they were ordered to kill.
Well, that's why there's those 3-tiered bunks in the tunnel entrance to provide additional sleeping accommodation for, the guards.
But it's quite, and you tell people that's why it's one long. I mean, it is also to do with blast dynamics, but it's so that there's no way they could hide, and they couldn't push their way in. They would be, out in the open, shall we say. But imagine that being your job. You're knowing that the world is coming to an end, and you've got to shoot people to stop them trying to protect themselves and their children, and that must have been a horrible prospect if that was your job. But then again, I don't even know if I'd want to be in the bunker. I think I'd be one of the first to go rather than linger for a few weeks and have radiation poisoning. But anyway, but yeah, the map room. I was in there, crumbs, about 2 years ago, and it was when the world had a spate of really bad floods and tornadoes, and the weather had gone. Mother Nature sort of think she'd got drunk or something, and she was just throwing everything at the world. And I had a spirit box going, and we had different voices coming through saying things like flood, power outage, earthquake, all these kind of things. And the people I was with, we were like, oh, we must be picking up a radio station.
Not underground, you're not.
Spoil it. And then it was me it was me.
To be honest, we did a spirit box session in there with the one that I've got, and the whole night down in the bunker, we picked up absolutely nothing.
Exactly. I've never picked up anything down there. I mean, I use a PSB7, and I've never picked. But there was voices coming through, and they were all talking about similar things. They were talking about like what I would call natural disasters. And so I said, it must. I said, I wonder if it's just the radio picking up. Or no, somebody else said that. And I sat there thinking, I went, hang on, have you seen the size of the antenna they needed to use the radios down here? We're in a Faraday cage. It can't pick up a signal. And when we realised that, it was like, oh. Now, it wasn't interactive. The only thing I can think of, and I don't know how this would work, because tech isn't I'm history. Tech, I know a bit how to use it, but it's not my speciality. Was it picking up like a residual conversation that was going on right in front of us that we didn't know about? And because when I sat and thought about it, all the things it was mentioning are things that could happen in the event of a nuclear holocaust. And it was when I suddenly realised, and I really cottoned on to the fact, it can't pick up a radio down here. It's not possible. Firstly, that proves that maybe PSB7s aren't just broken radios that pick up a signal. But it was the fact there was three of us who heard, I've got it on a tape recorder, the voices. We heard, not tape recorder, digital recorder. We heard it. And like you say, you said you had one going down there and you'd never picked up anything.
Didn't pick up the whole night. Don't matter where we was in the bunker. If we were in the medical room, if we were in the map room, if we were in the where else was there? There were 3 locations, didn't we? I mean, just in general, anywhere there. Even when we was in the canteen.
Yeah.
To be honest, we still didn't pick up anything.
Yeah.
I was just going to test it to see if there was something wrong with it. And no, as soon as I took it outside, and even though it actually lashed it down with rain that night, it started to pick up a signal when you go through that little tunnel when you go to the canteen area. It picked up a signal then and worked fine. But as soon as I got back into the main canteen area, it just cut off. It was just a white noise.
It was weird. It was. I mean, can you think of any explanation for it, Barry? Because you're pretty good with gadgets.
I mean, that's the issue is the SB7. It's a sweep radio, and there's nothing special about it as such. But the theory is that spirits are able to use that radio frequency, which is part of the electromagnetic spectrum, in order to communicate with us. So essentially, if you have no outside radio signals that are being generated, you're not going to pick them up underground, that's for sure. Whatever you heard was then clearly unexplained. And that is essentially why we use them, because when you've got instances where you can perhaps use the SB7 to scan through, and you'll get radio stations periodically and words will come out and stuff. But if you've got intelligent responses that are giving you corroborating information, then that is what you're looking for. They are fantastic bits of kit when they work, and when spirits are there present to work with it. The other theory to this is that the operators, the people that were working there or were using the facility at the time, they would have been familiar with how radios work, especially your AM and medium wave frequency ranges. And radios were like our equivalent of our internet now. That's how they communicated. So back in, we're talking the early 50s and early 60s, and you've got people familiar with how radios work and how they're made and how they operate. So there's no explaining to the spirit world how to communicate with us using a device. You are essentially, they're working out for themselves. I think that's fantastic. I think you picking up conversations on the SB7 in Kelvedon Bunker underground is a phenomenal bit of evidence. I think that's brilliant. I've never had it. Six times I've been there over almost 15 years. Never received a single spirit box response down there.
Really? I'd
agree with Barry on that. I mean, that's impressive. Yeah.
Thank you. At the time, I didn't really think that much of it until I started thinking about it and thinking. And I must say, I can't remember what the sweep rate I had it on was quite fast. It was either 250 or 350, and it was the same voices saying the words. If that makes sense, it wasn't like it was tornado. It was, so to have it over multiple syllables as well. And that's what was confusing me. And then when I started thinking, well, they built this in a Faraday cage so that if there was a blast, it wouldn't damage the equipment, because it would protect the pulse, the electromagnetic pulse. So yeah, that one is I've still got the recording of it, although it's hard to listen because you can hear the of the spirit box, and my digital recorder wasn't great, but you can pick up voices and you can hear us going, what are they saying? Did they just in the background?
Yeah. The other thing is that you have the radio on a fast sweep rate, so you're less likely to pick up words that are comprehensible from just radio stations. They're going too fast, so it'd be phonetics you're picking them up. Or if you're getting perfect words, well, that's amazing, because that must mean that word was over a certain range of frequencies, as opposed to in just one specific frequency range.
But that was all in the map room. We also got the word Spitfire come up on a Novelist. I was just like in there, and I didn't think to look up. And I was in there, Spitfire, and somebody said, "Oh, was this built in World War II?" And I was like, "No, it's not the same as Drakelow. This was Cold War. This is not World War II." And then somebody goes, "What's that up there?" And it's that model Spitfire that's up there.
It is, but remember, it was near a defence, facility, so
it was
interesting because it's been added to. Yeah, exactly. But the bunker's been added to over the years, hasn't it?
Yeah, but it wasn't built World War II, which is what everyone associates the Spit with. Whereas Kelvedon Hatch, I can't get my words out today. Drakelow was World War II because it was a shadow factory for the engines. But yes, it's. So the two of you have had some interesting experiences there. Has the bunker ever frightened you?
Once, and I guess that was because I was on my own walking through collecting equipment, and I went through the medical wing. Well, I had to go to pick it up from the medical ward, and I walked through the bunk bed area, and I saw what appeared to be a shadow of a person. Just, I know it's not pitch black in there because you have security lights and that kind of thing, and there was a shadow of a person lurking there, and immediately I thought, oh, who was that? It's a member of the team, or someone's going to jump out to scare me. And as I approached, there was nothing there at all, and I kind of immediately felt that I'm definitely not alone, and there was something there. This shadow figure was looking at me, watching me intently, and I had been questioning all night and asking questions, and maybe it was about now that it was going to reveal itself whilst I was on my own, and it kind of freaked me out. But it was momentarily done. But I remember leaving that room thinking, oh God, I hope it doesn't follow me. But no, I wouldn't say it's the scariest place I've ever been to of any kind. I think it's just interesting, and it's active in areas when it wants to be active. So there's potential for some really great evidence, like you experienced with the SB7.
Yeah. Phil, same question. This is isn't it? I ask the question, then go number 2, same question. Yeah.
When I think it was when we did a team only, Barry. Do you remember the person walking past the doorway?
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, I didn't see it. No.
Yeah, no, but we were doing a team only in the communications room where all the computers and that are, and the telephones and stuff. That big area on the second floor, and I think actually Barry's right. I think he missed it, but we all, most of us in the team, saw a person or a shadow of some type walk past this open doorway down by the toilets, and we didn't say nothing. And then the crazy thing was I was in there with my group on the latest investigation, and 3 people had exactly the same experience. And there was no one in there because we were all split up into our different groups. So they experienced a person walking past the same doorway, like years and years later. So that was, and I obviously didn't see it, but I knew of the story. So, and then I explained the story to them, and it was like, not sensationalism, but it was like trying to explain to them that we've experienced that as well.
Yeah.
So, but I think the thing that really blew me away was the woman talking in the map room.
Yeah.
That did really, and also the telephone as well rung down there as well.
Did it?
Yes. I think, was it your group, Barry, that asked for the telephone to ring somewhere in the bunker?
No, Kate did. I think she called out and said, if there are spirits listening, can you make a telephone ring? Because there was loads of dummy telephones.
And the telephone rang in the area that you walk down into, and it was like an old telephone. So you pick it up, and there's no dialing tone or nothing, but the phone rang, and then a voice on the other end said, right, is this place haunted, or do you know of a haunted place? And then hung up. Now, I don't know if it was... I know, really random. So I don't know what that was all about. But everyone, we all crapped ourselves when that phone rang because we weren't, because we didn't even, I think I've actually got it on EVP actually. So I'll have to listen back to see if I've captured it. But that was really strange that the phone would ring.
That is very weird. That is very weird. Well, in case you're wondering what you're listening to, this is Haunted Histories on Paranormal UK Radio, and I'm talking with the lovely BarriGhai and the lovely Phil Measey from GPS, Ghostfinder Paranormal Society. I'll call you guys GPS, it's easier that way. We're talking about the Kelvedon Hatch secret nuclear bunker, or the not so secret nuclear bunker, as it should probably be known, because if you ever come into Essex, there are signs for it everywhere. We're just talking about some of the weird things that have happened to us in the bunker. Well, it's actually the bunker that gave me the nickname of the military magnet. The fact that I seem to attract military ghosts when I go places. And that was after a spirit who called himself Matthew came through on the spirit board and was flirting with me. And apparently he was a RAF military policeman. And he was about 22 or 23, I can't remember now, and he wanted to take me out for dinner and more.
Oh, nice.
And more, which he thought was very funny, and he was laughing. The glass was shaking, and I said, are you laughing right now? Yes. And you could feel the glass shaking. It was very strange. But I actually stayed the night there in the bunks and, in my sleeping bag, all cocooned in my sleeping bag, and Kerry from Fright Nights London had taken a photo of me. She took a couple actually, and it looked like there was an orb on the front of my sleeping bag. And being a bit sort of, I sort of said, look, it's my husband's sleeping bag. He takes it fishing. God knows what's been spilled on it. It's probably just a reflection. And then as I rolled over to go to sleep, I felt someone squeeze my arm, and I jumped up and said, "What?" thinking it was Kerry. And she was already asleep in her sleeping bag, rolled over. There's no way physically she could have done it. I got my leg touched. I got my arm touched. I think it was Matthew trying to remind me about the dinner date. But and I'm wondering if maybe that orb was an orb and it was the stain on the sleeping bag.
It was a stain, Penny.
Well, who knows? But that was a bit of a that's where I got the nickname, the military.
But basically, you pulled a ghost, Penny. Is that what
I pulled a ghost? He was half my age. Yay
Nice.
me!
Yeah, go, Penny.
The old bird still got it. You are allowed to laugh at that comment, boys. It's fine. It's fine.
I'm chuckling quietly.
How did the dinner date go?
Barry?
I take it you stood him up.
He's not cold.
Oh, rude.
I did tell him I was married, then the husband didn't mind. The husband doesn't mind me dating military ghosts. I was hoping to get on this morning and talk about my ghost toy boy or something, but Matthew stood me up. He did. He stood me up. When you're a lot of people who've not been to the bunker. Now, Barry, you're younger than me and Phil. Now, Phil, you are. You are younger than us. You are. Unless you've faked your birth certificate, you are. Now, Phil, do you remember back in the sort of late 70s, early, and I think we've actually discussed this before when we were at Ettington, you remember the whole Cold War fear, the CND, the whole sort of...
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the film Threads that was meant to show what it would be like in post-apocalyptic?
Yeah, it was quite traumatic, actually.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
We've shown it at school as part of our nuclear education. People who didn't go through, and the fact that you were shown videos of what to do in the event of a nuclear war, and it involved putting a mattress on your stairs and getting under them. Do you remember that?
Yeah, or going in underneath your stairs in a cupboard and putting the mattress in front of
That's
the door.
That's it, yeah. Not allowing animals in there, taking tin goods in there enough to last you a couple of weeks, and all that kind of stuff. Like that would do any good if the bomb dropped on you.
On your house, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, for those people who didn't live through that, it's hard for them to, I think, to really understand the fear we lived in for a long time. The fear of someone pressing that darned button.
I mean, it was quite a traumatic film as well, really.
What, Threads? Yeah.
They showed people coughing up black blood and stuff, didn't they? And
You don't remember any of it, do you, Barry? Barry, none of this.
I've never seen any of that. No.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. You're just slightly too young. Because you're the same age as my husband, and he doesn't remember any of it.
79, yeah. That's right.
Yeah, you would have been just probably about 5 years too young. So he's 1980, and he doesn't remember any of it. But I remember all the CND rallies, the Greenham Common, I remember because I grew up near the US Air Force bases in Norfolk. I remember seeing a missile being transported along the road. And you just lived with it, and it was that constant, was someone going to press the button? You wonder how many more of these types of bunkers there are that haven't been opened up yet.
Well, I think, that's something that I haven't really thought about too much. And I think that, obviously that's the reality of it, but it's to think about in that context, that anyone that was down there working there, that fear is enough to leave that imprint of energy on the fabric of the building. Mm-hmm. And that's potentially what we're still picking up on over these years.
Yep.
And that's a good theory, actually, Vaz. I never really actually thought of it like that.
See, there, I put an idea in both of your heads. Hey, I'm not just a pretty face, boys.
See, the problem is I live in a part of the UK where there's loads of RAF bases and military bases, so I'd be targeted straight away, be blown off the face of the earth if it ever come to it.
Well, I grew up in Norfolk, same thing, like US Air Force, RAF. Where I am in Essex, I'm not that far from where some of the big army bases are in Colchester and stuff. So, yeah, and I'm just outside.
And RAF.
All three of us would be, because we're all sort of on the outskirts of London. So we're all in trouble. But it's hard to explain to people who didn't grow up with that. I mean, obviously, Phil, you and I were at the tail end of it. We weren't there during sort of Cuban Missile Crisis and everything else, but it's hard to explain to people who didn't think that you never knew, especially with the Cold War, with the antagonism we had with, America really had with the Soviet Union, but we were America's patsy. That kind of constant, is it going to end? But yeah, I mean, what was the Ultravox song, Dancing with Tears in My Eyes?
Yeah.
The sirens had sounded. I mean, that still makes me cry listening to it. So,
I mean, the video is quite harrowing as well.
It is, isn't it? Barry's like, what are you two talking about?
Hey, listen, I know Ultravox. I'm an 80s child.
All right, I'll let you off that then. But yeah, the song Dancing with Tears in My Eyes is about, you've been told you've got sort of 15 minutes or whatever, what you're going to do with it. And there was so much of that around that time. That's what people would think. And it's when you start explaining that to people, they do start to look at the bunker in a slightly different way. Do you find it claustrophobic down there, Phil?
Not at all.
Barry?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think that there's always that thought that goes through your head that you're underground, you're trapped, and there's not really any real way in or out other than the exits that are available there. It's one of those places that you feel like you're locked in, you're locked down, and if anything happens, you've got a long way to go before you're out into the open air. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do have, I think, a lot of guests that we've had over the years. Some of them have been, really put off by being underground, and that idea of being enclosed and the claustrophobia sets in, even if they're not claustrophobic generally.
Yeah.
So, imagine trying to work down there.
You see, the weird thing is, I am claustrophobic. I mean, when I went to the Hellfire Caves with you guys, some of those tunnels in there, I felt quite sort of, I don't like it. I felt the ceiling was coming in on me. But I don't feel like that. To me, Kelvedon Hatch almost feels like a 1960s office block at times. All right, there's no windows, but I've never...
I mean, they obviously worked the plans to make it as, big as possible inside. I mean, some of the bunk bed stuff areas, that all the where people slept obviously was smaller, but most of the areas where you go into, like the map room, say the medical wing, and where the communication area, I mean, it was obviously smaller, but I think it was all designed where people had enough space to
do their job,
do their jobs, basically.
Yeah. I mean, the power generation, the plant room down the boiler room, whatever it is, it's pretty big, and it's as far away as possible because it's noisy and it would have been hot. And then the broadcast studio is away from that in a kind of soundproofed area, isn't it? It's that place. What I admire about the place is because it's fully equipped with everything that you would need. There's from the broadcast transmission area to the boiler plant to the computers and text to communications to the officers' den, the map room, strategic centre. It's brilliant, and there's so many rooms there. I think in 6 years I've not been in every single one because it's just far too much to see.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's an amazing piece of engineering. I mean, if you try and discount the reasons why it was used, well, I mean, originally it was a radar base, but if you sort of push forward from because the radar base cost something ridiculous like 12 million to build, and they used it for about 18 months. But if you ignore that, when you think of the more nasty reason it was used for potentially world decimation. But looking at the actual engineering of it, it's. I mean, it is pretty amazing. It is. I mean, if you go to some of the small ones at the Royal Observer Corps, like those one up in York, there was a nuclear bunker in York, but that was only designed to house about 25 people, and it's tiny. I mean, you could fit the whole thing in one room in Kelvedon, but you think about the planning and everything, and. Yeah, I find it an amazing place. And I know a lot of people sort of say it's drab in there, it's this, it's that, but Mike does that for a reason. He doesn't want it to look like this big posh museum. And I think it's quite a sort of, I just wish you didn't have so many bloody mannequins in there that you get a guest, suddenly shine their torch and have them scream and run past you because they've seen one of the windows.
It's on Margaret Thatcher, one of them isn't there somewhere.
In Scotland, there's a secret bunker that's basically the equivalent, exactly the same. It's near St Andrews or something, and that place is just the same. It's 100 feet below ground. It's massive.
Have you been there?
No, I've just videos. I've never been up there. I mean, I've been past it, but I've never got to investigate the place. And I want to because I think it's literally the equivalent of the Kelvedon Hatch nuclear bunker.
Yeah, it'd be amazing, wouldn't it, to do a compare and contrast kind of.
I think that should be on the plan for next year. What do you reckon, Phil?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. But do you need a historian?
Yeah, why not? Let's go and do it. Let's document it. It looks pretty cool. I mean, I was watching videos on it.
Three of us. Imagine the three of us doing it. Oh my God.
we should put that to some of the TV producers. It'd be quite a good one.
Yeah.
You never know. I might be able to do it for a help episode, eh? If they need help there, if there's anyone there.
Is there a new series coming out?
I couldn't possibly say, Penny.
I can neither confirm nor deny. Is that the answer to that?
That's the line. That's the line. Yeah. Instead of no comment, I think just watch this space and keep an eye out for next year.
Oh, you tease, Mr. Guy. You tease. Anyone just realise who thinks, why are you talking about Help My House? Obviously, Barry was one of the three on the two series of Help My House is Haunted. So, and he gets to work with the gorgeous Mr. Chris Fleming and the absolutely gorgeous Mrs. Jane Harris, who's another good friend of ours and an incredible investigator. So that one in Scotland, yes, it would be really interesting to see if we can find any parallels on the two. But the thing about Kelvedon Hatch is you were mentioning about elementals and that there's otherworldly spirits down there. Now, I'm not dissing anyone who talks about elementals, the question I'm going to ask. I really am not. Why is it all of a sudden we hear so much about elementals? It seems to have been about the last 2 or 3 years, it seems to be the in thing.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I think the world of the Fae was popularised on television, and we have lots of popular programmes and Netflix and that kind of thing that brought the world of the elemental energies, those kinds of earth creatures, into the forefront of our popular culture and imagination. Having said that, Chris, Jane and myself and Series 2 of Help, we investigated a location where we encountered, for my first time, what we believe were pixies. And I know people are going to laugh listening to this, but you know what? I laughed at myself initially, and then you wait till you get evidence and see one with your own eyes. You know, I know it sounds bonkers, I know, but Chris and myself were outside of a cottage in Devon talking before filming started, and we both saw from my left peripheral vision, his right peripheral vision, this very small creature that must have been about 3 foot on 2 legs, run from the garden wall into the house, but it ran through the wall.
Right.
And I sketched it. Chris sketched it. We have similar sketches, and then he psychically saw this creature. And that wasn't necessarily the pixie as such, but that was an elemental earth creature that was dwelling in the property or around the property. And the reason for the haunting that they were experiencing was down to the fact that they desecrated what was sacred to these creatures, to these other, we call them elementals, you know, that's a very broad generic term to cover a lot of them. And it was a desecration of their land, a desecration of their trees. And it was just their mischievous nature to cause havoc and mayhem and things like that. And the more you look into it, the more you research, and there's not a lot out there, to be honest with you. There's not a lot of people that you consider to be experts in that field either. You find that, wow, this stuff is absolutely crazy. You just have to open your mind to the very possible idea and thought of interdimensional beings, and the fact that we are sharing our plane of existence with beings that we cannot see in our visual light spectrum.
Because I know Kate Ray in your team, she talks a lot about the Fae and everything, doesn't she? She's knowledgeable. I know she's done quite a few talks I've seen online about the subject.
Yeah, she's very well versed on it, and she's been interested in the whole Fae and elementals and that kind of thing for many, many years. So that's why I chose her when I was filming. And I said, you know what? I said to the team on camera, I said, I don't know enough about this subject. I'm not an expert in this field, but I know someone who is. And I phoned Kate up, and I got her to give me some information and that psychic impression of what was happening, which was absolutely 110% corroborated by the owners of the house. And she didn't know where I was. She didn't know what the case was. Yeah,
I know that. I mean, that there was a video that was caught about Kelvedon Hatch. It was actually some people I know who caught it. Like a face would appeared around one of the, the medical partition things. Yeah. I wasn't actually there when that was caught, but they were saying that might be proof of an elemental. I know when I was last there, I had my laser grid set up, and the place does seem to like to drain laser grids very quickly. I seem to go through. I put brand new batteries in my grid pen, and it drains within 5 minutes if I use it there every time. Brand new batteries. And it doesn't do it anywhere else. But I know that I was writing notes while the group would do. I think they were doing a Ouija board. And I was writing notes while somebody else was sort of running it for them. And I looked at the door, and it looked like an impish face and hand, almost as you're saying, about 3 foot tall, sort of peered around, giggled, and then disappeared. I was getting towards the end of the night. I was tired, and I'm thinking, did I see that? Didn't I see that? And my laser grid just drained almost immediately after that. I say, I don't know. I didn't have anyone else who saw it. I saw it, or I think I did. But when you get to that sort of doubt in your mind, whether you genuinely did see something or not, don't you?
Totally get it. Yeah.
You're getting tired at the end of a night as well. And
That last investigation that Phil and I did with a group of public at Kelvedon, which was last month, a member of the public was scratched on her back, 3 scratches, which are synonymous with impish behaviour in terms of, spiritual activity. It's very rare that anyone ever gets physically assaulted or hurt or marked during an investigation. It's happened to me maybe twice in 20 years. And this young lady was scratched on her back. It appeared to be very genuine. She was very distraught and upset and had to be removed from the area. I associated that with the EVPs we were getting, a lot of them that were very imp-like. And that word imp is thrown around a lot recently, due to probably the Help My House is Haunted. But ultimately, these creatures do exist. They exist interdimensionally, and they are responsible for the mischievous and sometimes malevolent behaviour that is experienced, where people think that they are being haunted by a human spirit. And when there's no human spirit there, what you're left with is that earth energy. And these creatures have been here far longer than we have, and the intelligence and the way they communicate is very different. So they can come in and out of our spectrum of light. So we may see them as shadows or passing figures very quickly, and we may not. And it's the use of technology that we're trying to evidence tangibly that these creatures do exist. And I think the best form of evidence for that are some of the EVPs that we've got. But until we kind of design better cameras or cameras that can see in certain levels of infrared and ultraviolet, not necessarily all of them at once, but we need to get that fine tuning just right so that we are able to see them at any given time. You know?
Anything you want to add to that, Phil?
I'm very Barry knows this anyway. I'm very skeptical of the whole sort of side of the, as you want to call it, paranormal, but I'm open to be pushed, if you know what I mean. I'm open to be sort of like proven, someone to prove it to me, really. I mean, I must admit, what happened to that lady down in the tunnel was pretty weird, because I do recall not being I wasn't very close to it. It was quite dark down there. But I think the whole time she had her back to the wall, didn't she, Barry? The whole time so it was really weird. But I'm open to be swayed in any direction. I mean, the whole fae and sort of fairies and imps and pixies and things it's way out there for me in my comprehension to think of that sort of thing. But I suppose people say, well, spirits, ghosts and demons, it's on that same sort of level. So I have to give credence. I have to give like my I have to be open to believing pretty much anything that's out there, because and then fair enough, I can go down that road sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I mean, I listened to all of it, as Barry was saying. I've listened to Kate before talking about it, and it is something that's kind of on my but anything is possible. I mean, I sometimes think like the gods that they used to worship in the ancient Greece or ancient Egypt or even Saxon Britain, was that to do with something that had appeared before them? That make and I do start to think about things like that and think, well, where did it come from? And could it have been some kind of other dimensional, it's not otherworldly because it's not from another world, but other dimensional, or when we say, if I worship anyone, it's Mother Nature because she's pretty darned amazing. But how do I not know that that's a kind of a spiritual elemental force that I don't.
Yeah, that's it. Well,
I don't know.
I suppose when you look at in the side of the Celtics and Viking and of all that myth and mythology and stuff there, it's got to have a ground. I don't think someone just sat down one day at their table and said, you know what, I think I'm going to make this up.
Yes, smoked a doobie and thought, what can I come up with that's really out there that I can to follow? This sounds good. Yeah, I did see something, but I just don't know if it was my eyes playing tricks on me, or if it was some kind of implantation, because I knew there was rumours of it being down there. But it grinned at me. That's the only thing I can say. This thing grinned at me before it disappeared.
That's bloody creepy.
It was. It really was. And the fact my laser pen drained straight away after that as well. And I just stood there and somebody goes, oh, your laser's gone off. And I'm like, I never told anyone about it because I thought they'd think I was bonkers. So... yeah.
But don't we get that a lot when someone talks to you about anything to do with the paranormal, regardless if it's fae, ghosts, spirits, whatever. And the first thing always comes to mind is, you think I'm crazy, but... with some of it, I don't think like that anymore because I don't really care. But stuff that I'm struggling to sort of, put into my brain... because I don't know. And the fact that I do always try and look for, could it have been that I was tired? Could it have been that because I was looking at the grid, my eyes were playing tricks on me? Could it have been like an implantation of thought because I knew of the video that had been taken in the bunker? But that's just being an investigator, isn't it? You look at could it have been? And then you think, well, I don't know. I can't prove anything. I can't say unequivocally it was any of them. But so... what would you say, Phil, is your favourite part of the bunker, that if you were given the chance to go down there for as long as you wanted, on your own or with a couple of other people who you trust, which area would you choose? Definitely that map room area. Definitely. I think there's something going on down there because we heard two different women. I forgot to say that actually, two different voices, and it was almost like they were talking at each other but not to each other. Does that make any sense? Cool. So, and when that phone rang down there, that was just really freaked me out because that was just really weird. Seeing none of the phones down there work. So how did the phone ring?
That's very strange. You could make them ring because the bell system that's underneath them, if you could nudge it, you could make it ring.
No, it actually rang, as in when we picked the phone up, it stopped. It rang, right. As in, and there was no dialing tone as well because we just checked it afterwards. So, I mean, hopefully I've captured it on my voice recorder, but it definitely rang because someone then spoke on the other end. Now, I don't know. Weird.
Contestant number one, same question.
Well, what was the question?
Thanks for listening, Paz. If you could, in any area in Kelvedon Hatch, you could be on your own or with a couple of people you trust, which would you like to really, really spend a lot of time in investigating properly? Not that you don't do it properly, but you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, the medical bay, I've had most of my experiences there. I know it's only small, but lots of visual phenomena, noises, and interaction with equipment. So, I mean, we once slept down there. I've slept in there, and the light turned itself off on its own in front of us, the switch on the wall. I remember that. Yeah, that made me jump a little bit. But that area is pretty cool, and I'll do it with anyone on my team. Phil and all of them. It's important that when you investigate with people you trust. Yes. You investigate with people that understand your wavelengths, and you don't have to say, "Can you please be quiet?" And it's that kind of thing. You know how each other work, and we've worked together for donkey's years. So it's kind of you just fall into that. The minute I get my recorder out, everyone's quiet because they know that it has to be quiet. You don't want contamination, and it's that kind of thing. So definitely, medical wing is a great area.
Cool. So obviously, with you're an events company as well at GPS. You're private investigators and everything else, but you're also an events company. you're pretty busy what you've got left this year that hasn't had to be cancelled because of this awful virus. Where can people sort of look up where you're going to be? How do people book on events if they're interested? Have you got
Well, that's it. You know, we had events lined up for this month, November, and there's one in early December. And I post these up on my Facebook and social media pages, and we shared on the Ghostfinder Paranormal Society Facebook page as well. So if anyone wants to, ever join an event that I'm running with my team, then it's going to be on at official BarriGhai Facebook page, and that they do sell out very quick. I mean, I'll put an event up and only 30 places and they're gone within a couple of hours. So people do have to kind of be quick. And that's it really. I mean, the ones that have been postponed, I guess, due to the lockdown current situation, we've moved them to January. Right. So most people have transferred over to there, and there are maybe a couple of places left. I guess there's probably 1 or 2 spots left. But we've got, where are we going? To the Old Lamb in Reading, or near Reading. We are also doing one of my favourite haunted houses ever, which is the former Hatton Court Hotel near Milton Keynes.
All right.
And it's a great place, and then also Fort Amherst in December. So looking forward to those.
Yeah, I've never actually done Fort Amherst. I've done quite a few forts. I've never done that one. And what are you doing to sort of keep yourself amused over the lockdown, Barry, when you can't get out?
Well, exactly, stuck in here in my little man cave that I'm in now, with the kids keep coming in and out. But it's it's good. I'm delivering paranormal workshops online. I have done since lockdown first began. And what I have set up now, I've got a Patreon page for people to become subscribers, members, to become my patrons, that would get free workshops, free paranormal workshops, once a month at the moment. But there are, other workshops that are dotted around in the month, but also discounts on events, early entry, early access, behind the scenes gossip and access and videos for when I'm filming and all of that. So if anyone is listening and they want to follow me, join up my Patreon page. The link is on my official Facebook page, Twitter and Instagram as well.
Cool. And I know with yourself, Phil, you're still got your day job, but unfortunately your lovely antique shops had to shut.
I'm gutted. I'm hoping, actually, going to talk to the owners to see if we can maybe get in there one night and do an investigation as a team only. I mean, the place is not massive, okay, but I have to get there really early in the morning on a Monday because of parking. So I get there for between sort of like 6:30, 7:15, but we don't open until 10 o'clock in the morning. So I've got the place
in Stratford upon Avon, isn't it?
Yeah. It is a creepy old place. It's like 1600s, I think the building is.
I would say that when I've been there, yes, I would say it's 16th and 17th century, definitely.
Yeah, it's got upper level as well that's been refurbished lately. I'm gutted that it's closed. So not happy about that. So I'll just keep myself busy looking for locations for us and stuff like that. I take the odd phone call on the GPS helpline. That's been very, very quiet lately though. But just in general, just ticking along, finding locations, like I said, and just,
and teasing me on Facebook.
And of course. Yeah.
And teasing me on Facebook. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that.
Listen, actually, I've got one more thing to say for all your listeners out there. If you're experiencing a haunting, or you have a case that's worthy of some real help, get in touch. Contact me, through Penny or via my social media pages or email, and we'll see what we can do.
Oh, is that UK only?
That could be anywhere.
Okay. Okay, because we do have a lot of sort of international listeners on Paranormal UK Radio, so you never know where they're going to come from. But yes, definitely, if you've got something and you want to send me the details, or you want Barry to get in touch with you, just let me know, and I have the means to pass all that over to him for you. Well, boys, thank you ever so much for being on the show tonight. I really appreciate it. It was fun, and you were both very well behaved. I was about to say we were too well behaved, Barry, and next time, no.
I was trying to be my professional self. I'm still on air, so I'll keep that pretense up.
Oh, it's when I say the show's now finished, you two are just going to rip into me. Is that what it is?
Maybe.
You wouldn't do that. You're too nice.
Oh, I know. Well, thank you ever so much for being my guest tonight. I really do appreciate it. So check out GPS, check out Barry's page. You can have a chat to them on there if you've had any experiences at Kelvedon Hatch. If you've got a property that's haunted, get in touch with them as well, because they're always looking to help people with stuff like that. That's been Haunted Histories on Paranormal UK Radio. Thank you ever so much for listening. There will be another show in 2 weeks' time. And don't forget to vote in the Higgy Pop Awards if you're listening to this before the 13th of November. To be honest, even if it's not me you're voting for, just get in there and vote. But I'd rather it was me you voted for obvious reasons. Yeah, I'm not ashamed. I'm not embarrassed. I'll beg. But on that note, have a great evening, sleep tight, and don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.